How is it going, everybody? It's Jay Gibson of the Paws podcast. I don't think Kevin will be joining me tonight. He's busy working on his article for SI, among a few other things. However, for the last time this season, as a matter of fact, let me just make sure we're good on all platforms before I really get going here. It is quite windy, and the sun is gone. However, but the Panthers finish the 2024 season, which say what you will about it. We'll talk about that in a sec. But among everything else, at least they can say they finished the season with a W as they take down Middle Tennessee by a score of 35-24 to win their final game of the season as they finish with a record of 4-8 for the third straight season. The Panthers finished with a record of 4-8 in football. Before we really talk about that and what the season as a whole in 2025, obviously everything that I'll talk about today, Kevin and I will probably go over more in detail at a later time on an episode of the podcast. We still haven't hit 75, but we will. We'll get there. I think we finally have an idea for a guest we'd like to have on. Obviously, we've been so busy with coverage of the football season as well as basketball. Speaking of which, a really big game on Wednesday, which I encourage all of you watching to go and attend. It's FIU versus FAU at the Ocean Bank Convocation Center. Getting off track here, I apologize. But above all else, it's just always good to end the regular season with a win, especially when you play at home here at Pitbull Stadium. It's always good. It's always good to feel that way. Not to mention, a lot of records were broken. I don't know the exact record for Kewan Jenkins, but he passed a prior FIU quarterback as far as total yards on the season. Eric Rivers now is number one as far as total receiving yards in a season. He got that, I believe, in the third quarter, if not late fourth. I think it was the third. Travion Barnes came close to breaking the all-time tackles record. That unfortunately did not happen. He came a few short. But just overall, a pretty good game as far as records broken. And it just goes to showcase the talent that this FIU team had. Kewan Jenkins today went 19 for 27, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and he was not sacked once today. So, I mean, his growth as this season has gone on ever since that UTEP game and the Sam Houston game on Vice Night, his growth has been absolutely wonderful to see. I think that if he stays with FIU next season, that's a big if, because obviously you never know if the transfer portal. I'm not going to say that Jenkins is going to leave or not. I do not know. Personally, I hope he stays because I do believe he is turning into a phenomenal quarterback, let alone the best in conference, one of the best in Conference USA right now. I'd argue that the quarterback we faced today, Nicholas Vadiato, is probably the best. Vadiato, by the way, finished with 256 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, and a sack. Man, Jenkins's game has gotten so much better as the season has progressed, and today was just a good combination of that. Now, I will give criticism where I find it fair. FIU's offense kind of settled down in the third quarter. Neither team scored in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, they did score a touchdown that pretty much put the game away at that point. But I will say I've been so impressed with the growth of Kewan Jenkins as the season has gone on, and I'm hoping that he stays here at FIU. Now, Eric Rivers, I mean, oh my gosh, another player who I really hope returns because he already has pretty much broken every single season record with FIU as a wide receiver. Most receiving yards in a season, most touchdowns in a season, and he even has the single game receiving yards that he got against New Mexico State, which is awesome. I hope he returns as well because we were speculating all year, who is the wide receiver one of this team? Kevin said there doesn't really need to be one, and I concurred. However, if you had to pick one, it's Eric Rivers, Dean Patterson at the 2. That duo that FIU had this season, Eric Rivers and Dean Patterson, had some electric games this season, and today was no exception. Eric Rivers finished with 10 targets, 7 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown, that being that 50-yard bomb from Jenkins to Rivers that pretty much put the game away at that point. Dean Patterson had 4 catches for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. Patterson had a great game. You even got Ross Fournette involved, 4 catches, 64 yards. That was fun to see. Funnily enough, one of the things I'm happiest that actually happened to this game was for the first time all season, FIU had a running back who rushed for 100 yards in a game. That did not happen this season. The closest that they came was actually last week against Kennesaw when Devontae Lyons wrapped up with 99. Today, he got to 103. So congratulations, Devontae Lyons. He has impressed since his emergence in that Jacksonville State game, and he's just a freshman. So if he stays with FIU, he can do some great things here as maybe their top running back. He's fast, he's elusive, and he's the first Panther this season in their season finale, nonetheless, to get over 100 rushing yards in a game. So shout out to him. A lot of seniors and a lot of graduates. This was their last game played. I want to give a shout out to all of them, but specifically Flex Joseph, who we actually talked to in the post-game press conference. I uploaded the video of Eric Rivers and what he said. I'm going to upload Flex next, and then I'm going to upload Coach Mack last. But the career Flex has had as a Panther is one to be remembered for a long time. Missed last season due to an injury before the season began, and now he gets to finish off being a Panther with a touchdown today. As we look here, Lexington Joseph, 11 carries, 23 yards, and a score. Devontae Lyons, like I mentioned, 15 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. I believe it was a 21-yard touchdown, I believe, in the second quarter. Maybe it was. I think it was the second. But so just what a career he's had. He's a Paws Up legend. He's been on the Paws Up podcast before, and it's always emotional for these guys. Their last games played with FIU, let alone being here at Pitbull Stadium, where they've spent so much, blood, sweat, and tears, being football players. So shout out to Flex. Defensively, the third quarter, not much happened except for one thing. I said in the halftime show that one thing FIU needed to do in the third quarter and beyond, create turnovers. As good as Nicholas Fadiato is, the FIU secondary is good enough to the point where they can create turnovers and help the FIU offense. And lo and behold, Travion Barnes gets a pick, which was absolutely massive. It killed off a very time-consuming drive. As a matter of fact, a lot of Middle Tennessee's offensive drives were time-consuming in the second half. Even when they were scoring touchdowns, they burnt a lot of time off the clock. It's a passing offense. That's kind of what happens. They don't really run the ball, but they do get a lot of completions, and that kills a lot of time. So all things considered, Middle Tennessee's offense was good today, but when FIU's defense needed to make some stops, they did. Obviously, the fourth down stop on their final drive, which, by the way, at Middle Tennessee's 2-minute drill was not very good. They burned a lot of time off the clock on that final 2-minute drill, and with like 4 minutes to go, they burned 2 minutes and only a few plays before the 2-minute timeout. And then after that, FIU's defense stopped them on fourth down. The ball turns over to FIU, and that's the end of the game. But by that time, they were down by 11 anyway. Or they missed a field goal. That's what happened. They missed a field goal, and that was pretty much that. So overall, this was a great game offensively for FIU on both offense and defense. It just it makes you wish that the offense we saw in this game could have been in games such as Sam Houston State on Vice Night, for example, and FAU as another, where everything was kind of clicking for them. They avoided the silly penalties for the most part. They did not turn the ball over, and you just again we go back to the fact that FIU, I believe, has 5 one-score losses this season. If FIU's offense played this good in certainly the Vice Night game, as well as FAU, I mean, we'd be going bowling right now. This would not be the end of FIU football season, but c'est la vie. And again, defensively, FIU played great today against one of the better passing offenses in Conference USA, and you also wish that this defense played this well against, say, Jacksonville State. They played good, but not good enough against Jacksonville State, and it's a long shot, but Indiana and whatnot. So, all right. With that said, I mean, this is the final post-game show, everybody. Again, let me say this now. We cannot thank you guys enough for following us this entire FIU season. It's been a grind. There's been some good. There's been, unfortunately, more bad than good. But through it all, Your support has been everything to us, from the previews. Shout out to all the guests we've had on our preview shows, from either the CUSA podcast roundtable, the non-conference slate, and more. Even FCS getting a guest from Monmouth was great, just so we can say that in all 12 previews of the show, we have had a guest in all of them, which is awesome. So we can't thank you guys enough if you're somehow tuning into this. But to all of you guys who have watched us throughout this entire football season, from the previews to the halftime shows to the post-game shows, and obviously everything in between with the articles we do that I've done on the Paws Up page, to the press conferences that we sometimes drop on social media, to all the other content we've done, to the guests we've had on the Paws Up podcast during the football season, such as Flex and whatnot. Thank you guys so much for watching what we've done. It means so much to us. We wouldn't be able to do this without you guys, without all the support. And obviously, I know this season did not go FIU's way. A 4-8 season for 3 straight years is just, in my opinion, unacceptable. At that point, you can't even say you're a mid-program. You're below average because you're not at 500. This was one of the more frustrating 4-8 seasons compared to the others, because I think in the last couple of 4-8 seasons, there really weren't many games where FIU was competitive into the point where they were either blown out or they really did not have a realistic chance of winning. So the 4-8 records were a bit more justified. This season, I feel like is not even the case because of how many one-score losses and how many situations where FIU could have won but didn't. You know, you think back to the overtime game against Liberty, and that you think to the game against UTEP where Keywan gets hurt, the Sam Houston State game where both offenses were abysmal, the Jack State game where got out of hand in the second half with Jack State's running a rush attack, and then you get to obviously the Kennesaw State game where the offense became anemic in the second half as well. So this is one of this. I'd say between the past 3 seasons of 4-8 football for FIU, this was the most frustrating because it could have been and maybe should have been so much better than it was, to the point where FIU should have gone bowling. And I mean, if you win those games, you have 9 wins. You're maybe competing for a CUSA championship spot, let alone getting into a very solid bowl game. But I'll save my opinions for that and about this coaching staff and the transfer portal and everything for maybe another time. Like I said, we want to get a cool guest on for episode 75, but beyond that, episode 76 or whatever, we'll try to do an episode where we talk about our final thoughts about the 2024 football season, maybe some team MVPs. I know Conference USA will drop their end of season first team offensive and defensive player of the year. I will say Eric Rivers and Travion Barnes make the Conference USA first teams. Travion Barnes should win Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year. I'd love to say that Rivers could win Offensive Player of the Year, but that should realistically go to Trey Stewart at Jack State. I mean, you're not going to get an argument from me there. But again, we'll talk about all of this at a later time on episode maybe 76, 77, et cetera. It is what it is. But again, final score for today's game: FIU did win 35-24. Overall, a nice way to close out the season. It was 2 teams competing to who can get to 4 wins in the season to at least end it on a high note. And thankfully, it was FIU. So I think signing day press conference is coming up very soon. And before you know it, we'll start talking about the 2025 season for FIU, which is going to have an interesting schedule. They're going to be going to Happy Valley, Penn State, Big Ten country. You'll then host FAU. So hopefully the Shula Bowl, FIU can finally take down their rivals from Boca Raton. Then you go to UConn, you go to East Hartford and take on a very good UConn Huskies team that will be going bowling this season. And then you get into the conference schedule where you have teams like Kennesaw State. Now they're going to be in their second year in FBS. You have teams that are still likely to be good, such as Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State, Sam Houston. And then you have a couple of newcomers in Delaware and Missouri State. So it'll be interesting to see which teams FIU does and does not play next season, and where those games will be, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess this is it for the Paws Up post-game shows for football. So again, I said this earlier, I'll say it one last time. Thank you guys so much for the support you have given us this football season. It hasn't gone the way any of us wanted it to. Coach will tell you that. The players will tell you that. But we had a lot of fun. It's been fun being here day in and day out. Kevin, of course, going to the post-game pressers. Kevin and myself going to the practices, fall, spring, summer, etc. And not just off covering, but deep down rooting for the Panthers. We are students and alumni after all, and now our coverage continues to men's and women's basketball, and then eventually down the line we get to baseball, which I can already tell you, Kevin's revving up his gears for that as we get set to go for the baseball season in the spring. So I guess I'll leave you there, everybody. Final score: FIU 35, Middle Tennessee 24. This is Jake from the Paws Up podcast saying, "Paws up, always."